Welcome back to another exciting episode of CyberDefense TV. I'm your host, Gary Miliefsky, and I am the publisher of CyberDefense magazine. Sitting in my hot seat today is a very special guest from Israel. It's Rubi Aronashvili. And Rubi has got an amazing company. He's the founder and CEO of CYE. That's Cy, CYE, SEC.com is the website. So he founded Cy, he's the CEO, and CySec is the website, CYE, Rubi, you've got an incredible company solving problems that are so important to our listeners, our viewers, folks who read our magazine, and you're going to tell them, something really critical that they need to know today. First, let's start with risk, right? You will offload risk for folks, and tell me who you are and how you do it.
Yes, so we've developed a mechanism in our organization supported by people and technology to allow risk reduction in a very accurate way based on scientific approach. Practically speaking, we are measuring the organization from the pen testing, red teaming point of view all the way to the risk quantification part of it, and actually optimizing cybersecurity investment for the organization to offload cybersecurity risk in the most cost-efficient way. So, we bring first to the organization three main pillars. First is visibility. First, understand what you have in your organization in order to protect it. Second, quantify what is more important than the other. What is the likelihood for something to happen? And in case it happens, what will be the cost in case of a breach? Then, as a result of those two items that I mentioned before, let's invest the cybersecurity resources in the right places to make sure that we reduce the maximal risk with the optimal cost. Now, whether we do that with a CISO that is already in the organization or provide what we call virtual CISO solutions, we have both of them. Depending on the organization, usually we will recommend from a certain size of an organization to have someone inside the organization.
So Rubi, you're really a solution provider to offload risk. You're going to help the CISO.
So depending on the size of the organization, with an enterprise, we will help the CISO to offload a lot of the effort that he needs from understanding the risk, performing the actual red teaming exercises in which you get very clear visibility into the organizational risk. And above all, how would you prioritize what you need to do first? How would you present it to your management to make sure that they understand the cybersecurity pain of the organization? That's definitely something that will be key.
Where's the most pain that people are feeling, and how are you taking away that pain?
So I think that one of the things that you mentioned, right, ransomware, for example, ransomware is not really an attack, it's a consequence of an attack, but that's the most, let's say, the most scary or leading fear factor that we see today in the industry in general, because in the end, you are being extorted for denial of service kind of situation in your organization. It can be also other kind of extortion, whether it's based on private information that was leaked or something similar. But the point is that after a chain of failures in the organization, you get into a situation that the attacker managed to get a significant gain in your organization. And then you can decide whether to pay or not based on how prepared you are to these kind of attacks. But if we take one step back, we see cloud-based vulnerabilities, infrastructure-based vulnerabilities, and application-level vulnerabilities emerging and causing those kind of, let's say, situations like ransomwares and extortions in an organization. And of course, we cannot forget the main, let's say, factor maybe when it comes to cybersecurity failure, and that's the human factor that still becomes or still is the most significant failure point or weak point in the cybersecurity chain.
Does CYE stand for cover your everything?
Yeah, from our point of view, when we look at an organization, we look at it as a complete unit. That includes the people in the organization, the processes, the procedures, the partners, the supply chain, and everything around it. From IT to OT to IoT and to cloud-based environments, those are all integral parts of the organization. And of course, the risk is relevant risk to the organization. We will try to identify it, quantify it, and of course, mitigate it in the best way possible. That's definitely part of what we do.
That's so important. Now, can you tell us, you've got some great clients. I looked on your website at CYESEC.com, and I saw some of the biggest groups in the world, which is pretty amazing for a company that is taking some of the keys and the pain away from people. So there's an incredible level of trust. Can you tell us about those kinds of clients that you have?
Yeah, so originally, when we started the company, we aimed to work with enterprises and global multinational organizations and that's still the majority of our customers. Today, we've developed also solutions for other size of organizations like mid-market organizations and more SMEs. However, the majority of what we do today is really with the big organizations. You can learn a lot from those organizations from sizing, scaling point of view. Every problem that you see in a small organization, the scale of it in a large organization will be significantly different. And that's something that once you're being trained on those kind of organizations, the capabilities that you develop will be much more efficient and effective for even smaller organizations or any kind of organization in the industry. And that's something that really from our point of view was a key step in the development of our organization. The capabilities that we've developed and the know-how was really due to partnership with the largest organizations worldwide.
So some of your customers, people will find on cyesec.com, and I'm super impressed. They may have branch offices in different countries. You've got offices in, you're a global organization. You have offices in Israel and London and New York and probably other places I haven't seen yet on the website. People can go to the website and check, but you're taking care of this risk and this problem globally.
Yeah, so from my point of view, integration is within minutes. Our solution is able to work with any kind of organization. Today, we have customers of 350, 400K employees from the largest organizations worldwide. And as I said before, the fact that we are able to work with those organizations in the scale level that we are describing here, that means that practically speaking, we are able to work with every kind of organization worldwide on a global scale with different distributed approach or consolidated approach. From our point of view, our platform and our capabilities are able to cover all of those. And that's a very important part of our approach. So whatever the architecture is, whatever the assets, the organizational assets are, we are there to identify those and cover those and provide, let's say, the best way to protect those specific organizations on a continuous basis. And that's also important to do that not only one time, but really on a continuous basis.
Can you tell our viewers and our listeners what your team would do to help the smaller companies who don't understand these kinds of next generation threats?
Yeah, so as part of our process, we will go through the same predicted path that an attacker would go to identify that and use that as a way to optimize and to put the relevant obstacles for the attackers in the right places. So our approach is prescriptive approach or more predictive analytics approach to cybersecurity, in which we don't only say what potentially can be the risk for the organization, we actually demonstrate it, go through the same path that an attacker would go to, and show the organization what would be the actual impact for that. So you get the full experience of a breach without paying the consequences as part of the process. And that way you can understand very clearly what are the risks, what are the implications, and above all, what do you need to do in order to solve that. And that's part of the overall package that we provide.
Your information on some technology that you've developed. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the Hyver platform is actually a platform that is based for decision-making on different levels. It actually takes the relevant partners or stakeholders in the organization from the operational level through the tactical level, through the management level, and all the way to the executive management and board of directors, and actually creates a mutual language between everyone. That means that the technical language will be translated to the executive language and vice versa. That means that a technical threat or risk in the organization that was identified will be then quantified into what will be the financial consequences, for example, for the organization, both on the impact if exploited or the mitigation implications. That means how much it's going to cost you to fix that. Also, we take the likelihoods for those things to happen to make it in a very clear mathematical approach that, hey, we know that the risk is there, but tell me what is the likelihood for that to happen in our organization. Then you can make, let's say, educated decisions based on those data items. So it's really a data-driven platform that takes the entire threat landscape of the organization, the risk profile that we've identified, including vulnerabilities, weaknesses, and so on. And based on that, you'll get an outcome of the very clear quantified risk, and more than that, the optimal way to invest your cybersecurity budget in the organization, what needs to happen first, how much is going to cost you, what will be the residual risk once you deploy the mitigation, and then you can split it, as you mentioned before, to acceptable risk, mitigated risk, and transfer risk. You mentioned cybersecurity insurance before. So we support all of those items, and we try to optimize what will be the best way to protect the organization from those three aspects.
Ruby, is there anything you think we missed that you want to share with our viewers and our listeners?
I think that one of the things that will be a topic for 2022 is the personal protection of VIPs in the organization as part of the cybersecurity overall, let's say, overall strategy, right? So one thing, just to explain that for a second, one of the things that we see as an emerging threat in the industry is what we call sextortion. That means extortion on sexual basis for VIPs or decision makers in the organization. Attackers are actually trying to get them to do something for them, whether it's financial gain or worse than that, to install something in the network based on the fact that they say that they have some kind of sexual content of a VIP. That's something that organization needs to understand, that it's part of the organizational risk. It's not personal risk, because if an attacker can convince a VIP executive, someone in the organization, to really take a step and get access for the attacker into the organization based on this kind of extortion, then it's an organizational problem and not only a personal problem of this specific person. So management protection or executive protection, that's something that has to be part of the organizational considerations for 2022 and later. So that's something that we don't see a lot, unfortunately, but we see an emerging trend of trying to leverage that.
Folks, this has been an awesome hot seat with Rubi Aronashvili. He is the CEO of CyberDefense.com. So check out his site, learn more, and come back next time for another exciting episode of CyberDefense TV. Rubi, thank you so much for an awesome hot seat interview.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
CyberDefense TV and CyberDefense Radio have launched 24/7/365 live streams. Visit them online today at CyberDefense.tv and CyberDefense.radio with your host and globally recognized cybersecurity expert and my good friend, Gary Miliefsky.